Good afternoon. Sorry about the slight delay. We have Congressional Julie Forchek is here to visit with us. Julie is just recently elected to the House of Representatives, and we're catching up on the project. And she just really wanted all the details. Was really excited about the fact that we have so much local involvement and so many people involved. So it was really exciting to do that, and is happy to see that we're in the ground and building and moving along quite nicely. So what I'd like to do is just have people go around the table and introduce themselves so you can get to know them. I think you know many of them, but just so you can see who they are again. And then I'd open it up. She'd like to make a few comments. And then the wonderful thing about it, she's going to open her up for questions if you have some questions about anything that you'd like to ask her about. So Tim Mahoney, Mayor of Fargo.
Brandon Bochensky, Mayor of Grand Forks.
Katie Schmidt with Onsted Twitchell, we're legal counsel for LAWA.
Travis Schmidt, General Manager, Moorhead Public Service.
Kip Kovar, I'm the District Engineer for Garrison Diversion.
I'm Paul Boersma with Black and Veatch. We're an engineer to the district.
Jay Anderson, Chairman of Garrison Diversion.
Okay. Bruce Grubb, City of Fargo Administration.
Hi, Bruce.
Welcome.
Nice, thank you.
Todd Fionn, City of Grand Forks Administrator.
Nice to see you.
And Broussard, the manager of McLean Sheridan Rural Water.
Welcome, Congressman. Bernie Dardis, Mayor, West Fargo.
Levant Elmtop, Director, member of Southeast Water.
Jim Schmaltz, East Central Region.
Dave Carlsrud, Mayor of Valley City.
Nice to see you, Dave.
Tom Erdman, the mayor at Carrington, and I had the honor of visiting with Julie and her staff here about 3 weeks ago in Carrington for a couple hours. Good to see you again.
You, Tom.
Alan Idso, Castro Water.
Al Grasser, Chair of the Technical Advisory Committee.
Rick Begwid, Northeast Rural Water.
Brent Bogar, working with A2S and serving as Administrative Officer for LAWA.
I'm Lisa Schaefer, and I'm an Executive Assistant at Garrison Diversion. Welcome, and thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Mary Meridian, I work with Garrison Diversion on the financial side of items.
Tammy Norgard, Vogel Law Firm. I've been working with Garrison Diversion since 2001 on this project.
Dwayne DeCraig, General Manager, Garrison Diversion.
Did you say Reese Haas is on as well, Barry?
Did see him on there.
Very good.
Excellent.
So, would you like to greet us?
Sure, I would be happy to. And I'm really pleased that you made a few minutes for me today. Thank you, Mayor and members of this organization. I have met with many of you. Some of you are fresh faces, so it's good to meet you all. And first, I want to thank you for all your hard work for your communities and for the cause of delivering good, clean, affordable water to the people of our state and this region. This it's so great to hear more about the kind of completion of the Garrison Diversion project. I went on a tour, a water tour, back when I worked for Ed Schaefer in the 90s, and did the whole Garrison Diversion, followed the canal, did the dam, all of that. And to sit with the mayor today, probably 30 years later, maybe 28 years since I did that tour, and hear how much progress has been made to actually complete that in a different way, but still completing the goal of delivering reliable water to the eastern part of the state, and then even to our Canadian friends who used to oppose this project. Back when I was involved with Ed Schaefer, that's where it was stuck, was Canada's opposition. So really neat to hear about how you are bringing this project to fruition and all the wonderful benefits it's going to have for this region and industrial development and just individual communities and supplying water to your citizens. So it's wonderful to hear about that, and you've kind of tackled a whole bunch of different barriers along the way. So kudos to you, and it looks like you're kind of getting far enough along where we can start thinking about actually using this water. So really, really great, and I can't imagine how many hours have been spent doing that and getting to this point and fighting the legal battles and everything else. So my message to you is whatever we can do to try to help complete that on the federal side. Want to be helpful. I want to introduce my team. Where are they? Ty Kennedy is sitting in the back. He's my legislative director. Ty's from Grand Forks, so he knows a little bit about the Red River water challenges, having experienced. Ty, were you born before or after the 1997 flood? Just barely before. We were talking how I was working for Ed Schaefer then and was actually arrived on scene right after the barriers broke. So I floated in downtown Grand Forks in a boat with the emergency officials. Dave Sprincinatic back then was head of the Water Commission, and I floated around downtown Grand Forks in a boat. I'll never forget it. I walked around there last weekend, did a little bit of bar hopping with my children. So Grand Forks is doing well. So anyway, Ty is my legislative director. He's out in DC. He's been with Senator Hoeven for 8 years. I stole him away from Senator's office with Senator's support, of course, and he's now my legislative director. So it's great to have him on board because he understands the Washington side of a lot of this stuff, and he understands North Dakota. And then to our right is Mary Christie. She's in charge of our state eastern region, and many of you probably know Mary, but she's our boots on the ground here in the Valley, and a wonderful team. She came from Kelly's team, so she also is well-versed in a lot of these issues, knows a lot of the players, and is a great voice for me on the ground here. So I think I'll just don't want to take up too much of your time. I'd love to answer some questions if you have any. I'm sure you have plenty. There's not very much going on out in Washington, D.C., so it's been a really easy transition, kind of slow, a little bit boring. We wish there was more to do. But having said that, if you have any questions or things you'd like to talk about, especially as it relates to these projects or water infrastructure or anything else, happy to spend
Mayor
as much time.
Bushinski, you want to say something? You were in Belgium or something looking at potatoes. You want to mention anything to Congresswoman?
Well, we actually had you in Grand Forks last week, so we talked about the tariffs and all the issues, and it's great to see more construction, more production plants coming to the U.S., and we had a pretty good example for her with the Agristo plant. Granted, that started before the tariff chaos, but it made it only more important, so appreciate the work you're doing, and thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'm glad you like the bars in Grand Forks, and that her kids are over 21, just so you guys know. We don't let little kids drink there.
Yes.
Not yet. No.
I have a son at UND, so we were there celebrating. So I was being a mom on Saturday, which is nice.
You probably could have shown her around because weren't you up there at school one time?
Sadly, I know my way around because I spent plenty of days in Grand Forks as a student too.
Oh, okay. Good.
Anybody? No?
No hard
All right.
questions, Bernie? You don't have any hard questions of what's happening in Washington, or?
Thank you. And many of you mayors who I haven't met with, we will be in your presence soon. We're just kind of slowly getting through all the communities and want to sit down with you and get updates. And also, if any of you others have issues you want to talk about, we'll probably have to come touch base with you.
We're there to see you on the last week in April.
Okay, soon you'll be in DC. Yeah, I've met with many. I think we did our 100 days, so it was 100 days on Monday since I've been in office, and have had 140 meetings with North Dakota groups in the first 100 days. So we're definitely very interested in hearing from you and keeping in touch. And I'm happy to share where I am on all of these issues. I know there's concerns. Obviously, there's a lot going on, and things are changing fast. And we're very engaged on the tariff side of things and in close contact with our key industries, agriculture, conveying our thoughts to the White House on those things. Have met twice with the U.S. Trade Office folks to express our concerns and try to get insights into what they're thinking, what we're seeing. So want to stay on top of that and offer as much as we can in terms of perspectives from North Dakota. Working hard on the Farm Bill. Hopefully that'll get passed here either shortly after. The reconciliation package is probably what it's going to be. The reconciliation work will start in full after we get back from this Easter District work period. So, and then the timeline on that is hopefully the goal is to have a bill to the president to sign by Memorial Day. And that will include a lot of the work on the tax cuts and jobs extension and any of the offsets that we need to include in that. And, as much revenue-related policy, I'm hoping we can get some permitting reform included in that package to help projects move a little quicker, help save some money. Love to get rid of some of the dumb things like having to have a contingency plan that there's no intention of ever using, but you have to spend $50 million on an intake. Things like that just make no sense at all. We should be better stewards of the taxpayers' dollars and try to get rid of some of those requirements. So my time as a regulator, 12 years for the Public Service Commission, makes me very interested in trying to make government work better for our citizens. So that's my goal. Let me know what I can do to help in things that you see.
We are excited because we did talk about the federal money that we're going after, and Julie's made a commitment to really try to help us in that particular endeavor and would like to help us out. And then on a side for the diversion, we talked about flood insurance and would also like to work with us on FEMA to expedite that because you know about regulation, so that should be helpful. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Appreciate it.
Excellent. Thanks all.
Roll call, please.
Eltoff. Bigwood. Wachensky.
Here.
Bonsack.
Here.
Broussard.
Here.
Carlsrud.
Here.
Erdman.
Here.
I gotta say it right. Idstow?
Here.
Idstow. Mahoney.
Here.
Nielsen.
Riley for Nielsen.
Brian Riley. Okay, thank you. Schmaltz. Here. And Schmidt.
Here.
We have a quorum. Oh, Mayor Dardis. Excuse me. We have you here.
Are we good?
Yes, we're good.
Alan, welcome aboard. Glad you can be a new member. Hopefully we won't have agendas as long as we do today, but I'm sure we can get through it. I need a approval for the agenda. And I think, Mayor Bushinsky, we have an additional change of the agenda.
Yeah, I guess I would make the motion, but item 6A can be under executive session, so they'd be allow executive session for item 6A. Otherwise, the agenda is as good as I see it here as the revised agenda. So I'd make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. There's minutes that we have for November 27th, December 18th, January 15th, and January 6th. I'd entertain a motion to approve all those minutes, please.
Also moved.
Moved, and a second I'd take from that as well. Thank you. Any discussion or corrections of the minutes? All those in favor say aye.
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 Take that as motion carried. Financial report, Mary Meridian, tab E.
Sure. This is the 2024 final budget analysis. As Mayor said, it's on tab E, so I'll just kind of hit the highlights on it. So for 2024, the income budget was $80,000. Actual was $37,600 brought in. Expenses, total expense budget was $206,000. Actual expenses were $166,000. If you go down to the bottom of the part under account activity, of 2024, Lake Agassiz bank balance was $380,000. After the income received of $37,619, total funds available were $418,471. And then after all expenses paid, the ending bank balance 31st was $251,616. And as with all of the other Lake Agassiz meetings, all of the checks that have been paid since the previous meeting are highlighted. And those are check to Onstead Twitchell, Advanced Engineering, and Ide Bailey. And then this would be the final budget that would be used when Lake Agassiz does an audit or in agreed upon procedures with Eide Bailey if it's chosen to do it that same way.
So do we need action on that, Mary?
Yeah, you would need to approve it, please.
Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second, Schmidt.
Any discussion or questions? Roll call vote, please.
Eltoff? Bigwood? Yes. Bachinsky?
Yes.
Bonsack?
Yes.
Broussard?
Yes.
Carlsruhe?
Yes.
Erdman?
Yes.
Idzo?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Aye.
Riley?
Yes.
Schmaltz? Schmidt?
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Barry, you still on?
Yes. And then, Mayor, should I move on? Keep moving? Okay.
Yeah.
Tab F are the bills paid, and I kind of already talked about who they were paid to, but those are the copies of the invoices, the 4 bills that had been paid since the Lake Agassiz last met through the end of the year. And then tab G is put in there just for your information of dues, summary dues that have been paid. So that is in there for your information, and I'd answer any questions if there were any on it.
Okay.
Okay. If not, I'll move on to the draft 2025 budget, and that is on tab H. And to develop this, it was looked at basically very closely to the 2024 budget. We met with Maureen and Susan, the Lake Agassiz Financial Advisory co-chairs. Brent was in there, and then also Bruce to walk through the budget. So I can just kind of, and I put in there the 24 actuals so you could compare it. So the draft income budget is $36,945. The expenses, and we kind of broke out by line item all of the dues that Lake Agassiz pays. There is nothing for accounting this year. That is for Eide Bailey as a line item, and in the past, Lake Agassiz has done the agreed upon procedures for every 2 years since there's not that many checks cut, and the last one was for 22-23. So if you keep doing the same way, it would be for 24-25. So that's why there's no line item there. The insurance of $550, and then admin, legal, and financial showing $220,000, and showing the breakdown of who that would go to, showing total expenses of $227,050. So if you look at the bank balance for Lake Agassiz, beginning January 1st, the bank balance was $251,616. Anticipated income would be $36,945. Anticipated expenses of $227,050. So at the end of the year, it looks like Lake Agassiz would have a bank balance of $61,511. So I don't know if, I know Maureen's on and Susan's in the back, not to put anybody on the spot, but everybody in our meeting that we had was to, this is the best knowledge that we have right now, so to ask for an approval of this at this base, and if you had any amendments, they could always be added later.
So you want us to approve this as well?
Yep, to approve, if you're okay with this without any amendments, to approve this as the 2020 budget.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
So
Girls
moved.
would move.
And can you second?
Yes.
I'll second it.
Okay. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Okay. I'm going to start with Rick. Bigwood?
Yes.
Bachinsky?
Yes.
Bonsack?
Yes.
Broussard?
Yes.
Carlsruhe?
Yes.
Erdman?
Yes.
Idzo?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Yes.
Nielsen? O'Reilly?
Riley, yes.
Schmaltz?
Yes.
Schmidt?
Yes.
And Eltoff. Motion's carried.
Mary?
Yep, and Mr. Bayer, there's a handout, this didn't end up in the board books, but it's the budget analysis for 2025, so this was set at your places. And it shows that same draft budget that I just talked about, so total income is $36,945, actually received since January 1st through the end of March of this year is $3,410. The total expense budget, as mentioned, was $227,050, and actual expenses to date, as of March 31st, was $85,638. So if you go down to the bank activity, beginning bank balance was $251,616. Add in the income of $3,410. Total funds available as of March 31st was $255,026. And then break out and show all of the expenses that have been paid in 2025 up through March 31st is $85,638. And with that, on March 31st, the ending bank balance was $169,387. So I sure would answer any questions. Otherwise, we'd look for approval of that.
Is there a motion to approve?
I'll approve.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Okay. Chensky,
Yes.
Bonsack,
Yes.
Broussard,
Yes.
Carlsrud,
Yes.
Erdman,
Yes.
Edzo,
Yes.
Mahoney,
Yes.
Nielsen. Riley, sorry.
Yes.
Schmaltz, Schmidt,
Yes.
Bigwood,
Yes.
Altough. Motion's carried.
Okay, then I'll move on to tab I. Those are the bills, actually all of the invoices of the checks and bills that have been paid since 2025. Sure would answer any questions if there were any on those either.
Information or motion as well? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Roll call vote again.
Bonsack,
Yes.
Broussard,
Yes.
Carlsrud,
Yes.
Erdman,
Yes.
Edzo,
Yes.
Mahoney,
Aye.
Riley,
Yes.
Schmaltz, Schmidt, Altough, Bigwood,
Yes.
Bochinski.
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Mary, one more time?
One more time, this will be the last item. Tab J is for Lake Agassiz membership dues. The very first page is the draft letter that would be sent out to all systems that have paid dues in the past. And then the following pages are the breakdown for those dues. And then also the Red River Valley Water Supply Project, we used to call it the capability piece, just a front and back, talking about the Red River Valley Water Supply Project would go in that mailing. So if the board is good with those, there haven't been any changes in the due structure from last year, just the letter and the capability piece has been updated to state where the project is currently at.
Thank you. We're going to go to 6 item A. Katie has a motion that she'll read.
The next item on the agenda has been moved to executive session for contract negotiation strategies and attorney consultation regarding ongoing contract negotiations related to the project partnership and water supply agreement for the Red River Valley Water Supply Project in accordance with North Dakota Century Code Sections 4404, 19.1, 2, 5, and 9. These items may be discussed in executive session. The topics and purposes for this executive session are contract negotiation strategies and attorney consultation regarding ongoing contract negotiations related to the project partnership and water supply agreement. Discussions on these items in an open meeting could adversely impact the board's contract bargaining positions and could ultimately result in adverse fiscal effects on the board's bargaining positions. Therefore, an executive session is necessary and warranted. Mr. Chair, at this time, a motion would be in order to discuss this topic in executive session rather than in an open meeting.
Can I have that motion, please?
So moved.
So both Carlsrud
Second.
and second. I suppose I'd roll call that too, Brent? We'd roll call that, right, as well, to go in executive session? Roll call, please. And just for logistics, we'll be going up to third floor to the Red River Room, is what it would be. It'd be Lawa board members. Staff can be available for questions. Who else was going to be in the room? Brandon,
I think that's it.
okay.
We need a roll call.
Broussard.
Yes.
Carlsrud.
Yes.
Erdman.
I guess I need a little more clarification. Maybe I'm not hearing exactly, so what got
We'll go
read
into
here?
executive session to talk about the consultative work plan review. We'll go upstairs, do that, then come back down into session.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, Idzo.
Yes.
Mahoney.
Yes.
Nielsen. Riley, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Schmaltz.
Yes.
Schmidt.
Yes.
Eltoff. Bigwood.
Yes.
Chensky.
Yes.
Bonsack.
Yes.
Motion's carried.
And Brent, can you try to figure out that people that are remote, how they can get up into that remote area up there? Yep. So we'll step away and then we'll come back down, so. I think everybody's here, right? Everybody? We'll call the meeting back to order. Mary Murday, you're back up, interim financing series C.
Mayor, if we may go back to item 5F, just to approve sending out the Lake Agassiz membership dues.
What, you want to approve?
Yeah.
Is there a motion to approve the Lake Agassiz membership dues?
So move.
Seconded. And Tom has just asked when you speak, go a little bit closer to the mic because he's in the dead zone over there, so we have to be careful. So I'd like him to hear everything because he's voting, so. It's okay? Okay. Roll call vote.
Mr. Carlsrud.
Yes.
Erdman.
Yes.
Idzo.
Yes.
Here.
Mahoney. Riley.
Yes.
Schmaltz.
Yes.
Schmidt.
Yes.
Eltoff. Bigwood.
Yes.
Bachensky.
Yes.
Bonsack.
Yes.
And Broussard.
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Now we're going to go to 6B.
Sure. Yes, if you would turn to tab K, which is, I referred to it as Interim Financing Agreement Series C. Just to give you a little bit of background, this is something that I've been talking with the financial advisory co-chairs about, showing like the payments that we've been requesting of the State Water Commission. So in a conversation meeting, it was decided that everything that had been requested since the beginning of the year, we would put in the Lake Agassiz books. We kind of go by series when we request the cost share, and of course it's a reimbursement cost share from the State Water Commission. So under tab K is what we do for Series C, and you'll see it's request 62, 63, and 64. Those are the requests that we've done up through March 31st of this year. And I'll just state total, if you go down kind of to the bottom, it just shows that state funding paid, and this is since the 2019-21 biennium, has been $73 million, that they had approved $84.7 million. So left on that part is $10.9 million. So we were putting this in there for the Lake Agassiz Board's information, coming through the Lake Agassiz Financial Advisory Chairs or through Brent or anybody. If there's anything else that you would like to see regarding that, we sure would do that. But these are the requests, each request we thought that we would put in here that we sent to the State Water Commission for cost share reimbursement.
Any questions? Next item, please.
Okay, and then the next item is our Series D. That starts on tab L. The State Water Commission decided to start a new cost share with us instead of continuing back. So this is the 23-25 biennium work plan for the systems that signed on to it. This is for Series D. And again, we put in all of the cost share requests that we have asked for up through, I see number 26 is in there. 28. So if you keep turning, sorry, I didn't tab all the pages, but cost share request, funding request number 28 shows that request, we're asking for $1.5 million. It shows the total budget of the 180 million, which was the state cost share, 60 million was the water infrastructure revolving loan fund. So of that 180 million, we have 116 million remaining, or 65% of the cost share yet. So we were just going to keep putting these in the Lake Agassiz books for your information. If you want to see something else, it's just to let us know.
Thank you. Any questions? Move to item D, PPA status and operational review. Brian Nazaranis and Shane Kors to explain. Mayor Bushinsky, you want to introduce what we're going to talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. We got a great team out of Colorado, worked with a lot of different really complex water systems. The genesis of this really started with the PPA review and taking some of what, a lot of what John Shockley and his team had begun on Lawa's behalf when it comes to the PPA, and building off of that, we've got a third party involved with Mr. Nazarinas, and then as well with John Dingus with Fargo, and then a technical team to go through that PPA and really to help push us to get to the finish line of that and give a good technical review on the PPA and the operations. And what you're going to get now is those findings, and I think it's some really good work and give us a good place to move forward from. So with that, we got Mr. Nazarinas and then Shane Kors will also join, and they're from Precision Water Resource Engineering.
Good
you
afternoon.
might recognize the Kors last name if you've ever had a silver bullet. So there you go.
Good afternoon. So I'm Brian Nazarinas. I'm a water rights attorney, water rights and environmental law that's related to water. And that's been my practice for almost 40 years. Practiced in Colorado, other western states, New Mexico, Arizona, some in California, a lot in Oklahoma, but starting in Colorado. And I was retained by Grand Forks last fall to review the PPA and its and the exhibits that are attached to it and the related documents. And I reviewed basically the July 18th, 2022 draft, as well as Operational Plan 2. And through that process, I've been collaborating with John Dingus, Fargo's water attorney, and I've known John for 40 years. We've worked together, been litigated against each other, been on the same side of issues in the courtroom, and we've been collaborating through this. And by and large, the issues I'm going to address are the issues that were in the letter that Mayor Mahoney and Mayor Baczynski sent on behalf of the Lawa Board to Garrison Diversion back in February. But we thought it would be useful to review those again before Shane gives his presentation. And I don't presume to know the history of everything on this. There's obviously a massive project, a huge amount of history going on, and a lot of different relationships. Just review those documents, and had extensive discussions with Shane and John. So we're bringing our collective experience from the outside, which is about 120 years of combined experience. But we don't know beyond basically the documents that we've reviewed. So the issue one is, in my opinion, Lawa and its members should have control over the project after an agreed upon break point. And whether that's the biota tanks or the biota plant or break tanks or the Cheyenne River discharge, from that point on, Lawa should have control over the administration of the project. And in my opinion, Lawa ought to contract on behalf of its members with Garrison Diversion for a bulk water contract for the delivery of the project water to that point. And then Lawa and its project participant members would have a separate agreement between themselves for the distribution and administration of project water after the break point. And that would include the operations in the Cheyenne and Red River basins, as well as Lake Ashtabula operations. And I think it's, Garrison Diversion obviously has an incredibly important role in terms of operating the Garrison Diversion Unit and the Missouri River side of the project, and dealing with the Bureau of Reclamation and the Bureau of Facilities. But it just, I think from the outside looking in, it makes sense for local. It's just good governance for the local users to be responsible for the local operations, and particularly with some of the issues that are going to be facing in the Red River and the Cheyenne River basin, which leads to issue 2, the Lake Ashtabula, and I have it as Lake Ashtabula water supply contracts. And in my opinion, pursuant to the federal law, Water Supply Act of 1958, a water supply contract should be obtained from the Corps of Engineers for the storage and release of water from Lake Ashtabula. And this may require 2 contracts. The Thompson-Acker account holders are entitled to, under federal law, they essentially have a vested interest that entitles them to storage in Lake Ashtabula. And there needs, those users contributed to the funding for Lake Ashtabula as required by Congress when Lake Ashtabula was authorized in 1944. So that's an original project purpose that has to be respected by the Corps. And then on top of that, there would be a contract for project water. So essentially, either it's one combined contract with the Corps, or two different contracts. But there should be water supply contracts under federal law for those interests, the Thompson-Acker account water and the project water. And it's important that the project water operate in a manner that respects the Thompson-Acker accounts. And there are issues, I think, as some of you know, in terms of what the priorities of those accounts and how they, how they relate to each other. But those issues need to be settled. There needs to be a water supply contract with the Corps for that storage, for that space, and then the contract for the project water that would fit in on top of those native basin operations would be necessary. Issues 3 and 4, there needs a specific operational plan acceptable to LAWA members should be developed before the agreement between LAWA and the project participants is finalized. And this is a foundational issue, just like the Lake Ashtabula contract issue. You can't, in my view, entering a participation agreement before you know how the project's going to operate is not advisable. Water users are entitled to know what they're going to get, how they're going to get it, and how the project's going to operate to get them their water. And those are things that, at least in my practice, I think in John's practice, those are things that are determined up front before people enter final agreements. And I think it's important to bear in mind that water contracts are multi-generational contracts. So it's important to work through the challenging operational issues up front. And as time goes on, as water becomes more scarce, issues that people think, those aren't going to matter, or we'll be able to kick the can down the road, those are the ones that come to head and result in litigation in the future. And so doing the hard work up front of hashing out difficult operational issues and embedding those in an operational agreement, and which would be part of the PPA presumably, those are important. So that's issue 3. Issue 4, and this is one that John has particularly stressed, but I concur. But both the LAWA Garrison Diversion Agreement and the LAWA Project Participants Agreement would need to have robust, equitable, and clear dispute resolution processes. The draft of the PPA that I reviewed, the dispute resolution is pretty one-sided and not favorable to the participants. Issue 5 is one that I'm not terribly familiar with, but essentially it's important for presumably for this board and for Grand Forks and Fargo. There need to be provisions that include LAWA's expenses as part of the Red River Valley Water Supply Project expenses for the cost-sharing portion of the state. And I think that's an issue that as a board you'd be familiar with. And then issue 6, there needs to be full engagement with the North Dakota Department of Water Resources regarding Lake Ashtabula administration and operations, including water rights for the Thompson Acker accounts and the administration and shepherding of releases of water, whether Thompson Acker water or project water, from Lake Ashtabula to lawful users. And this relates to issues 2 and 3 above. And I think this is an important issue, obviously, from an administration perspective, but it also goes back to the point I was trying to make on the operational plan. From taking a look at North Dakota case law on water rights, it's pretty sparse, and you haven't had a lot of conflict in this state, at least as far as litigation on water. In Colorado, we probably have, 500 Supreme Court cases, Colorado Supreme Court cases on water rights adjudications. And I think California is probably behind us. And the point is that scarcity is what drives administration and resolution or conflict, one way or the other. And so that's where it's important, I think, to get the state engaged and having them thinking about the hard questions about how water is actually going to get down the river from Lake Ashtabula, from the project, without being taken by people who aren't entitled to the water. And those can be hard issues for water users and for state administration officials as well. So with that, I will turn the presentation over to Shane Coors, and thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and to address this group. I'm going to talk a little bit about the operational planning phase 2, the operating agreement. My name is Shane Coors. I'm with Precision Water Resources Engineering. Our slide here. Our motto is stewardship through technology. We build high-tech tools to help manage water in contentious and complicated places. My background is as a civil engineer, and I've been doing this for 22 years, 16 with the company that I founded in 2008. So we have some experience working in some of these contentious basins, mostly in the western United States, developing operating agreements, complicated places. First one we spent a lot of time in, about 21 years in the Truckee River Basin in California, Nevada, Lake Tahoe, very early place where there was a lot of litigation and complicated things that went on there. So a new operating agreement was negotiated for about 30 years. It began in 2015. We built the tools to help implement that agreement. That was a very long process. Those tools are still in place. Colorado River Basin, you probably see a lot of this in the news. Lake Powell, Lake Mead. We represent one of the 7 basin states as they collectively negotiate a new operating agreement for 2027. It's very political. You've kind of got the nexus of a lot of issues with water. We built the tools that are used by the Bureau of Reclamation to manage the Colorado River, and we're involved in the negotiations as we speak. So that's something we've been involved in for many years. And then the Rio Grande Basin, I was an expert witness for the state of Texas in a case before the United States Supreme Court a couple years ago, and that was all about litigating elements of the 1938 Rio Grande Compact. Once again, an operating agreement, went into litigation, and that's a case that I was involved in, like I said, a few years ago. So this is the experience we come from, and I just want to start out by making a couple of general comments. And the first one I'll say is this, echoing a little bit of what Brian said, we do not purport to know, I do not purport to know the history, the nuance, the uniqueness of this basin. Every basin is different, and they're all complicated, and they're all important. Don't claim to know that. However, we have worked in some complicated places that are bumping into these issues earlier because of scarcity. And so we do bring some experience of walking this path, seeing it through to the finish line. And I think there's value in bringing perspective to this situation from the outside, because while these issues here are unique and they are important, they really aren't new. That, you know, there's others who have experienced these same problems and just challenges and have overcome. And so there is perspective that we feel like we can bring and want to offer that. So please receive these critiques and comments in that spirit, that we have been made aware of the documents, we've read them carefully, and brought our perspective to what we see. So I'm going to start out with a couple things still in the general comments category. What I see is that there are some critical regulatory prerequisites that need to be addressed. It's hard to write an operating plan when these foundational water management concepts, regulations are not in place. This is nothing new. I think everybody's aware of this, but I do want to reiterate the importance of it. And I would say in the operating agreement, there appears to be an attempt to write an agreement around the critical voids in the foundational regulatory criteria. It's going to be hard to write an operating agreement when we don't have these specific things that I'll list right here. The Thompson-Ocker accounts in Lake Ashtabula, it's not well defined, the priority on those, how those will fill, how those will spill, where they, you know, and those are important pieces that would come underneath an operating agreement. How is water going to be delivered to its rightful owners? How does it get shepherded as it goes through? How do the users get assurance that they will get their water? Those are North Dakota Division of Water Resources issues, I believe. And then the Army Corps of Engineers on Lake Ashtabula, you know, Brian spoke at length at these things, but the storage contracts need to be established, need to understand how that reservoir will be operated. And also, especially for Grand Forks, just the Red Lake River Water Control Manual seems like that's not firmly established, and that has impact on the supply for Grand Forks. And so we'd like to see those things established and understood so that the operating agreement can be built on top of that foundation, as opposed to trying to figure out how to write an agreement around critical voids in, you know, we'll call it, you know, critical regulatory prerequisites for an operating agreement. So just reaction to that, this is, you know, just kind of how to characterize what we felt in reading this. So given the level of specificity of the OP2, phase 2 of the operating agreement, and the lack of foundational regulatory provisions in the basin, it's surprising to me that the signatures for the participation agreement are being solicited. It's a little bit surprising to me that the pipeline could be sized, because some of the critical modeling assumptions can't be confidently specified that impact water needs to come across to meet the potential need down the road. And particularly, I was looking at it through the lens of Grand Forks, but their need for supplemental water, in my opinion, was not clearly established. I think there's still big questions about that. Not that it isn't, it's just there's big questions, and we have asked those questions. It's surprising that an operating plan really could be developed with this some lack of specificity. And then just with the water control manual revision process is wrapping up from our research and looking at it, and the critical issues of water appropriations in the conservation pool are still not resolved. So it would seem that process needed to be, or maybe needs to be, actively engaged in to get those things straightened out. And so a couple general comments about the operating plan. From what we see, the OP2 has much to say about who makes the decisions and about decision-making protocol, but is lacking in specifics of how the operational decisions will be made. What are the criteria? It's not clear how critical decisions, meaning specific criteria, will be made by and even for project and Thompson Acker stakeholders in a drought. This should be clearly laid out in an operating plan. The stakeholders are left dependent on operators to make critical decisions about their water supply based solely on their judgment in that critical time. That's not a good place for the stakeholders to be. The development process, from our experience in doing operating plans that turn into operating agreements, should be more collaborative among the stakeholders. Stakeholders should be able to comment on, participate in the development of the key operational criteria along the way, at key stages, at every point, to have their input and concurrence. Okay, so we'll move on to the second group here, would just be administrative concerns just about the administration that's spelled out in the operating agreement. Speaking about Lake Ashtabula, it's arguably the most important feature in the basin. Much operational detail concerning its operation is not specified. How will the Thompson Acker and project accounts be filled? What happens to project water at the end of the year? Does it carry over? Does it convert? I don't think that's me. Okay. What is the priority for release among these accounts when release capacity is limited? Who gets to go first? Are there limits? Those kinds of things are typically spelled out. How's evaporation charged to various accounts in the lake? I probably could have a longer list here of just the specifics that we were looking for to be addressed and weren't finding all of that. I think everybody would share this, but the operating plan has to clearly define release protocols, including timing and assurance that the release will be made. So as it is right now, it seems like in the most critical times, we're not sure if the water will be available or how long it'll take to get there. That's problematic. And so it's got to travel a long way. It takes a lot of time. Having additional time to have that water be made available seems unacceptable to me. The operating agreement, the plan says water below the conservation pool may be available for water supply, but will require a competing use analysis to identify the greatest need. Release requests may require no longer than 2 weeks to process. It's unacceptable that especially the Thompson Acker account owners do not have certainty as the availability of their water. The more severe the need, the less certainty of its availability, it seems. This is largely a Corps of Engineers issue, needs to be engaged with them, but it seems to needs to be vigorously engaged, that these things have to be established. Moving over to the pipeline, we don't see little indication of how the pipeline will be operated. From my look through, I see it provides only that during drought phase 3, the pipeline will operate to maintain Lake Ashtabula's conservation pool. During drought phase 4, the pipeline will increase filling operations on Lake Ashtabula. That's what I found as far as details about how the pipeline will be operated for this. It's essential that precise conditions for when the pipeline will and will not be operational should be defined and agreed upon by the project participants. I noted in one table 20 in the operating plan, this is kind of an example of the language that we were seeing. Through discussions, it was decided that since the drop in Lake Ashtabula volumes was relatively slow, a half-capacity import would be reasonable starting point. Project operations then discontinued in September, et cetera. It appears that the authors of OP2 envision that operations will be an ad hoc reaction to current conditions, as opposed to well-defined criteria that are agreed upon in advance by the stakeholders and codified into the operating plan. It's just uncomfortable to me that the big decisions at the critical times are just going to be done by others in an undefined way. This is water, and I understand that it's not a precise science always, and there's always has to be some room for judgment. But this is to the excess. It is possible, and in my opinion, it's needed to have criteria ahead of time so that the water right holders, the account holders, have some understanding of how those decisions are going to be made and what they can expect from their water supply. Here's another side of that. The pipeline operation should be clearly defined to maximize the benefit and minimize the spill. So when water comes across and goes into Lake Ashtabula, you don't know what the future holds. Is it going to get drier? Or is it going to get wetter? You don't know precisely. But there needs to be some effort to say, hey, if there's excess water there and it gets spilled out, if that's project water, that was paid for. That needed, it was paid to bring across the pipeline. And so what criteria are in place to try to minimize the amount of water that didn't need to be brought across the pipeline? Not to say that spills are eliminated. It's an uncertain situation, but how are they minimized? And so, to define it, spill is an undemanded release of water. It's water that goes out for no particular purpose, just to make room in the reservoir. And so I'm not going to repeat that. In that same progression in the operating agreement, that same table 20 in a later year, it says at the beginning of the year, project water was pushed out of the reservoir to make room for natural flows. Okay, that's a spill. That water was spilled. And sometimes that happens, understood, but it illustrates the need to define criteria for how are we going to minimize that occurrence happening. And I think that's going to lead into something I'm going to talk about in future about the predictive modeling. Having a good look into the future is, I guess I'll say, the number one way to minimize the spill. And so I think that'll come. I'll talk a little bit more of that in a second. And then real quickly, I'll just go through this, but return flows are an important water supply source for users who are downstream of the large municipal users, specifically Fargo and Grand Forks. And very little detail is provided in the plan for criteria concerning return flows and bypasses. Analyses of the effects of different return flow and bypass rates are provided, but specific criteria are not established. You would like to see that be the result of those analyses. How are these returns and bypasses? How are they going to be measured? Which gauges? Is this a monthly average? Is it a daily average? Is it an instantaneous flow threshold? These are the things that have to be well specified so that we know how is this going to be implemented, and then ultimately how would it be enforced. Transit losses. This is a really hot issue in some of the other basins we're working in right now. But when you put project water on top of native water to deliver it, it actually it increases the loss rate on the river. And so with the transit losses and how those are going to be charged, how that's it needs to pay its way, so to speak. How are we going to do that? Otherwise, the system water, the natural water, takes an unnecessary hit. And so these need to be specified. That would probably be something that would be you would engage with the state engineer or Division of Water Resources. They're typically involved in that sort of a situation. This is not all the concerns that we had. We listed them in a report, and I've got those listed here that I'm not going to go through each of those in the interest of time. And then this is just talking about the technical tools. For a modern operational plan to be robust and effective, the development process must include the development of technical tools that will be used to administer it. As these rivers get more complicated and the operating agreements get more complicated, you got to have tools in place to implement what the agreements say. And to the credit of the authors of the operating plan, OP2, they recognized this and proposed a suite of 3 technical tools for this purpose. This is our wheelhouse. We build these tools. That's what we do. We build it for large water management all over the western United States. And so we have a couple comments on what the tools that were proposed. The first tool that was proposed is a water accounting model, a very needed tool for this agreement. Is, water accounting is, let's put it this way, if you're running a company and you have a very small company that just started and you're trying to keep track of the finances, you can probably run that company by looking at the bank balance and just know how things are going. But as things grow and get more complicated, that very quickly becomes inadequate. You need to start layering on top of that bank account categories. What are the different streams of revenue that are coming in? I want to track them separately and understand what's going on. What are the different expenses that are going to be going? I need to track those separately. It's the same thing with water. And so when the agreement to manage the water in a system gets sufficiently complicated, you introduce water accounting. And it's no different than what I just described. And in this case, water accounting is needed. But for this agreement, it was proposed that the water accounting be implemented in Excel. Our experience with that is that Excel is not the best technical tool for this job. It's highly opaque. It is not transparent to the stakeholders whose water is being tracked there. It's difficult to transfer to other people. You end up with the person who built it as the only one who can run these things because they get very unwieldy. And it's just prone to errors that live there and are very difficult to find, and they live there for a long time. We have been hired on multiple occasions by large entities to get their water accounting out of Excel and into better tools. So it would not seem prudent to me to start that way. Some of the most important accounting details are not explained, and I'll leave it at that. There's a list there, and there's just limited functionality. Water account tracking should not be limited to the observed period. So I want to make this point because this transitions into the next. But water accounting certainly does need to look backward in time so that we know exactly what the status of the accounts is today. Whose water is in Ashtabula? How much is flowing in the river? That is certainly important, but I think the accounting should also transition to looking forward so that a projection of the user's water supply is known and understood going into the future within the same account framework, because the accounting of the water represents everybody's water supply. That's where the water supply is, and if we don't have a good picture of that going forward, it's harder to make informed decisions. So there was a schematic on the last slide about how that accounting might look. This was from OP2 that has the 3 accounts going through the river. We would propose something, we worked this up in our shop here, but this would be more like what we think the accounting might look like for a section of the river. Each of the users is specified in an account. You've got storage accounts, you've got pass-through accounts. The users are allowed to take out of a certain account but not others, and all of this is replicated technically, and it's very transparent for users to know exactly where their water is and how it got to be where it is, and that others who don't have an entitlement to that water aren't getting it. There was a second element of the technical tools called the Drought Management Dashboard, the DMD. The information provided by the DMD as proposed, or as it was shown in the operating plan, that information exists from other sources. There's plenty of places you can go to find the same information for people who do that profession. You know, that's their role, to monitor those things. But more importantly, in my opinion, information from the DMD is kind of provided as a proxy for water supply outlook. Right, that's the reason why we care about drought and what the future might hold as far as drought. Is we're most interested in what is my water supply going to look like in the future, and so I think that would be a more appropriate thing to be building tools for, is to forecast the water supply. It's possible and would be much more useful to provide an outlook or a forecast of each stakeholder's actual water supply. So this would be accomplished by developing a forward-looking operational forecasting model that is seamlessly integrated with the water accounting model. Those are some technical details. The final tool that was proposed is the predictive model. Certainly agree that a predictive tool is important and needed. In this case, for this predictive model, it uses climate indicators as proxies and attempts to correlate them to future stream flow. So using these proxies as a way to get an idea of what the future stream flow might look like, we think it's a better approach. In our experience, this is how it's done elsewhere, is that you forecast actual future water supply. Stream flow forecasts are available out there from reputable government agencies, the River Forecast Center out there. These exist. Professional forecasters, they should be engaged to let them know, hey, there's this agreement that's coming into place and we need certain forecasts at certain locations. We've been involved in that process and they're very welcome to these ideas because this is what they exist for, is to help water management go well. So it was interesting, the indices do not seem to correlate very well with the stream flow, is what we were seeing at the stage that it is at right now. So we don't have an actual outlook for future water supply, and it's not clear how the information that comes from this predictive model will actually be utilized by the operators to make real-world decisions with stakeholders' water. Those two dots need to be connected more clearly, in my opinion. And this, just the sum up of this is that the stakeholders are left completely dependent on the operators to make critical decisions about their water supply. It leaves the stakeholders a little bit blind to how's this going to work and what does the future look like. It's not well defined. And I'm going to pass on this. I've used probably more time than I needed, but this would be a little bit of a picture of how we might envision reworking the tool to be more fit for use to support this really important operating agreement going forward. So again, we have a few more specific concerns that are listed here, and we elaborate on those in our report. And I would just say finally, in conclusion, I think our assessment is it's really important to get the prerequisites done, and then the operating agreement needs to be more collaborative and have a more effective forward-looking component, and be a little bit more of the collaborative effort technically of the parties that will be impacted by it. So with that, I'm finished, and I think, are we taking questions?
Mayor Bushinsky, I think what you've done is you've really shown us how complex this is. A lot of information was given. I assume the slideshow will be available to members to look at if they'd like to at some time to do that. Does anybody have any question they'd like to ask at this time, or do you want to digest it a little bit? Brent, we had a couple motions that came out of this discussion that I think you passed out. Is that correct? Mayor Bashinsky, you want to go through those? You had two motions, I believe. It's just a piece of paper you got that says motion one, motion two.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, what's clear is we got a lot of work that needs to get done in a relatively expedient time. We originally talked about the PPA in June. I mean, that's clear that that's not going to happen. So we've got a lot of work to get done. This motion here really allows LAWA to get involved and to move the process along from what's the work that's been done, to continue off that and continue to work together. So it also sets up the framework for us to be able to get cost shares on this work, because we don't obviously want LAWA to be expending a bunch of dollars and be 100% on the hook. We'd want the cost shares with the state, just like all the other task orders. So do you want me to read the motion, or it's a wording?
Please read motion one. What you're trying to do with this is to define what we'd like this group to look into. Is that
So
correct?
as you can imagine, the attorneys drafted this, not me. Here it goes. Motion one is with respect to the Red River Valley Water Supply Project to authorize and direct LAWA with the assistance of Grand Forks, Fargo, and current LAWA legal counsel to assume control of drafting and development of agreements and technical matters for the operation of the project, including but not limited to a project participation agreement relative to the construction of the project, an agreement between LAWA and Garrison Diversion for delivery of project water, operating agreement among LAWA and LAWA members participating in the project for the operation of the project and project water from and after Garrison Diversion's delivery of project water, including shepherding and use of project water and water rights. 4 agreements with the state and federal agencies for operation of Lake Ashtabula project and Thompson Ackerman water and water rights, and 5 other matters for operation of the project that is acceptable to LAWA and LAWA members. You want me to read motion 2 or leave it at that for now?
So that is your motion. Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ann.
Mayor Mahoney.
Obviously,
there's-
there's a little reluctance, so if somebody probably wants to have a discussion. Is there questions, Tom?
Well, right, I guess my question is has Garrison Diversion, other than what they just seen here now, had any contact other than the letter that they received from LAWA concerning our concerns that we had as LAWA and with the PPA agreement? Or is this the first information that you have seen from Garrison Diversion?
We've had multiple meetings with the leadership group, including Mr. DeCray and others, to let them know the direction that we're headed. Really, we're setting it up so we can get the operations agreement done. We're not intending to take anything away from Garrison on their work, but we need to define where the work split is going to be. I've had conversation with their leadership and with Garrison staff. I don't know that if it's been taken seriously. It falls on deaf ears at times, but the conversations have been happening. And clearly the PPA conversations have been happening for more than, well, it's coming up on 3 years, and we haven't been able to move that forward. So I would say it's a three years worth of work, and it's definitely accelerated in the last, just knowing the timeline, trying to get to a PPA in the last several months.
Tammy Norgard.
Chair Mahoney, I mean, I have probably a lot to respond to be honest, but I'll keep it brief. The first concern I have is that we have an agreement between Garrison and Lake Agassiz, May 8th, 2020, cooperation agreement, that we agreed how we were going to move this project forward in the planning part of it. And we worked with Grand Forks and Fargo very closely in putting that together. All the attorneys got together. We put the language together. That document governs our relationship, and it specifically says that Garrison will do the planning, construct the project, own and operate, and specifically do the operations at the beginning of this project. We also suggest and agreed that there's a time frame of when Lake Agassiz and Garrison will be getting together to make sure we finalize the operating plan. And so the concern I have is this motion will be a breach of contract on behalf of Lake Agassiz. So I think you want your attorney to probably look through that and have some conversations. But second, and I talked to the attorneys and the engineers before this and gave them some history, because I'm concerned that, as there's been some discussion of the PPA, I want to tell you guys how we have developed agreements in the past between Garrison and Lake Agassiz. And we've started working on some outlines of some agreements. In the case of the PPA, we had meetings in the mayor's office with Fargo, Grand Forks. We brought in technical people. We asked a lot of questions. We said, how do you want this to operate? It's something that you guys all have to agree to, and it has to work for you guys. So we bring the questions to Fargo, Grand Forks, all this input, drafted this up. I got Lake Agassiz's council involved, many meetings with John Shockley and Katie to talk about, okay, what don't you like? What do we need to adjust? This is how we've done the other agreements too. Nobody handed this agreement to Grand Forks and Fargo and said, sign this, it's done. No. It's steps. We start with something, we bring in like Agassiz in, they agreed, we sent it out to legal counsel for Grand Forks and Fargo on July 18th, 2022, and we said, hey, let's get together and start talking about this. What do you like? What don't you like? What do we need to tweak? What are you concerned with? We didn't hear anything on it. We never got a red line until we got the letter in February with the 5 points. And Jay Anderson sent a response back saying, we'd love to work with you on this. We'd love to talk to you about it. Let's get together and meet. Let's get the attorneys together. I have been asking many times, can we get the attorneys together like we have in the past? And I've been met with a complete wall. And we haven't had any input from the attorneys. And so what's interesting to me is hearing the attorney talk about, wow, the importance of water contracts. You need a water contract on Ashtabula. No kidding. We have been working on that for years. We have been getting the congressional delegation involved. When we started this, the Corps didn't even talk to the Department of Water Resources. And they were saying, we will not listen to the Department of Water Resources. If they say release water, no, we manage only according to us. We're saying, but you can, yes, they can enter contracts. That doesn't mean they will at any given point. But I'll tell you, they've come a long way. DWR has been working with the Corps. We've had them agree to a memorandum of how they will be operating. They've taken our comments and put them in their operation manual. So we're making progress. This has been years we've been working on this. We've been meeting with the DWR on Thompson Aquifer rights for years. In fact, we are the ones that said that we recognize that our model, we want the model to work. And we were looking at the priority dates. Grand Forks has the top priority for Thompson Aquifer. And the DWR said, well, no, they all have, all 5 were given them the same priority date. And I said, how do you do that? That doesn't seem to work with prior appropriations. You know, what do you have that can support that? Because we're concerned about it. We want the project to work. We want the model to be defensible. They provided a bunch of information to us. And I said, we need to get Grand Forks involved in this. We need to get Fargo involved in this. Okay, so for the engineers and the attorneys to say, wow, you should have a better understanding of your Thompson Aquifer rights. Yeah, absolutely. I would have expected the attorneys and the engineers to talk to our engineers, to talk about what have you done with the operating system? Can we help? Can we provide input? Can we collaborate? Could Precision be a subcontractor of Black & Veatch to help with the operating plan? Can we be collaborative and move this forward together? None of that. I have not been, nobody's been willing to meet with us. They never asked anything about the operational plan. And so for Lake Agassiz to then say, we're going to pass a motion to take the project over and take over operations, I find that remarkable that you pull the trigger and say, we're going to take it over, when they didn't even ask any of the questions about the history or where we've been. They're just saying, this is wrong, this is bad, you should have thought of that. They don't even know what we've been doing on this. And so I'm frankly a little surprised at the level of criticism, especially when we've been saying, hey, we want to work with you guys. We're all on one team. We got to build a project. We're going to the legislature. We're going to the Water Commission. We're getting funding. We need to be on the same team and work together. And I didn't get that impression from this. And I'm very concerned about the breach contract element. So I think that that's something that your attorney should look at.
Just to clarify, in some of the leadership meetings, we have talked about this. So I don't know why that wasn't communicated back to you, Tammy. And I guess, Brandon, I'd like to ask, I thought legal drafted this.
Yeah,
Am I
this
wrong?
has been reviewed by legal. I don't think there's a
So
concern there.
could somebody in your legal team just respond to the question she had? Because, yeah, we want to look at our previous agreements, and if it's a breach, we have to talk about it. We can wait on this motion. It's just that we had talked in leadership meetings about operations, looking into contracts for operations, so we can write a PPA as well, because there was concerns on the operating, how it is. And Jay, I was under the impression in our last meeting, that's what we talked about.
And the intent is there, but the problem I have is that you haven't included any of our engineers, any of our consultants, our attorney in anything. When I have asked if your attorneys have been at all discussions with our attorney, I got nothing. Therefore, that's where I guess I'm very disappointed on that part. And where now all of a sudden you bring this all in front of everybody, and you're going to try and have a motion by your LAWA directors that make it to the point that you're going to take over the operational side. I mean, in short, you've literally blindsided us. And I have a real problem with that. And I'm waiting for the answer.
Yeah, well, I'll give you the answer. We certainly expected that. We know we forecast this many, many times with you, and we knew the answer was going to be we were blindsided. I've heard a lot of ours. We've done this. Our consultants. Ours. Yes, you've been doing this on behalf of us. You haven't really collaborated with the users of Wawa. We've been window dressing. We've been talked to. We're here to rubber stamp everything that comes through. Now we want to get to a PPA. We want to do our review with a third party so we can dig into some of these issues. It's great that you're working on it. We're being asked to finalize a PPA, and we want to have a third party review on it. I think Wawa and their users deserve that. We wouldn't be doing our jobs unless we're looking out for Wawa and its users. I'm glad that Garrison thinks they're doing that too. That's great, and maybe they are. There shouldn't be any worries with then having a third party look at that, coming together and getting it done. And that's exactly what's happening here. I don't think you can all claim you're surprised. This has been going on for years, long before I even got on this board, and we can all act shocked. That's a great response, but it's just not true. So I'll leave it at that.
Can I add just one thing?
But
And that's that, like, the comments that were made about we need a better understanding of, filling, spilling, things like that. I think those comments should have been first made to the engineering team, from the engineering team to the engineering team, from the lawyers to the lawyers, so that we could work on that. Because it's for the engineering team to come and tell you, wow, you need to have this information, and nobody's ever thought of it. I think that's a little irresponsible, because that's not even remotely what this looks like. And there might have been conversations. I know you've had leadership conversations between the mayors and the chair, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about getting into the details of the operating plan. And we've had budgets every 2 years. We have a budget, and there's a budget of what do you want to do when, how much pipe do you want to get in the ground versus how much money do you want to put into the operational plan. We have a national engineering firm that's built many large projects in Black and Beach. They have a plan of here's where we are in the windows of time of what we're going to do for the operational planning at what timeframes and with what money. And so far, and with the City of Grand Forks and City of Fargo's input, we've prioritized getting pipe in the ground now. Okay, so then there's going to be some money available to really dig into operational planning. And, that's been a decision that everybody has made, and it's with Fargo and Grand Forks, and the technical team has been involved in the operational planning. And so it's something that it's been a part of this process. And I think that it's probably not come up at your meetings.
No.
But it should start at the lower level, and we should be moving together in one direction. Because I don't see that the DWR is going to look at it fondly if they say, Lake Agassiz, you're going to just hire your own people and take over on this and throw the rest of it in the trash. Did you talk to Garrison about it? Did you try to collaborate? Did you work with them? Did you try to be a part of their operational plan? And if the answer is no, I don't know that the State Water Commission is going to look favorably on that and say, sure, we'll just write you a big check. Why don't you go, throw what they've done in the garbage and start over? And I'm being a little facetious here, but I think that's how it's going to be received. And I don't know that that's the smartest approach or fiscally appropriate for public funds.
Mayor Brzezinski.
Thank you, Chair. Well, we obviously don't speak for the Department of Water Resources. They can obviously speak for themselves, but we're at where we're at. We need to move forward. I think Wawa is interested in taking a larger role. At some point, we had to make the discussion. Some point, we had to move forward. It's always too early. We're all surprised. This is nothing. Like I said, this is nothing new, and we can pretend that it is if we want. We can decide how we want to move forward. There's a lot on the line right now. There's a lot of users that are looking at this saying, I want to be a part of this project, and I want to be able to have a say in it. If I don't, I'm not going to be. We got some MOCs that I don't think are going to end up turning into people signing if they don't feel like they've got some control over the project. And that's my opinion. Again, we can continue down this path, but I would say, in my opinion, it's not working. If it was, we wouldn't be where we are today.
I understand, Tammy, the objections to what would happen, and just for the board members, we could delay a decision on this time, because I think we have to percolate a little bit. Don't disagree, there probably needs to be better communication, because of the leadership, we did talk about operations. And yes, Jim?
I think there's been a lot of information that's been put out today between the two, and I think that they should sit down and discuss this with their attorneys and then bring it back, because sounds like this could get to be a real legal battle if we don't do it right.
Well, and then, you know, if there's a lot of stuff that could be shared, there's no reason for us to hire and repay for that if we
Right.
already have a lot of garrison work that's done. And Dwayne, I just think, you know, your team has to come up and we have to have discussions of what's going on and share the data we need to share. I think, but the discussions we have had is when the water's delivered, then who would manage the water where it goes. I think now we're just getting more involved, so we have to figure out how to have those conversations. And truly, as our attorney says, that we may have agreements that we have to go back and modify. So we would have to do actually a different motion.
I was just going to say, you know, we've always worked well with LAWA until recently. And I mean, if LAWA wants to come to Garrison and say, we think you need to hire engineers to augment the team we already have, I don't think Garrison would look down on that. I think we have cost share already. I mean, if we can hire who we want basically through the legislature or not, because we've been put in charge of this project by the legislature. And if you want to add more firms to the engineering, I don't see where that's a problem. And we already have cost share, and then you wouldn't have to go to the Water Commission and ask for cost share. The other thing I see that is problematic, that if Garrison has engineers and LAWA has engineers, then it looks like this in front of the legislature. And I think that would be disastrous. And so I think that, you know, if you think the team needs to be augmented, let's work that way instead of separately and look like we're fighting with each other, because that is really going to look bad in front of the legislature, and it's probably going to limit our money. I mean, we started out at 220 in the legislature this year, now we're at 150 in the Senate. And some of the comments were, well, they only got about 4 miles of pipe in the ground and things like that. And so I think it's important that we keep putting pipe in the ground, but I think this is also important too. And when we started, if you'll remember back when at the beginning of the project, when we talked about focusing on engineering or focusing on construction, we thought, well, if we spend 2 bienniums on engineering in legal matters, and we keep going back to the legislature and asking for money, and they see no progress on construction, that we're not going to look good. And so that was why at the beginning of the process, we said, let's get some pipe in the ground and show the legislature that we're capable of doing this project and keep moving forward. So maybe we're behind the 8 ball on operations, but I think we can catch up.
You got another comment?
Well, I mean, I just disagree. I don't think that we can get a comfort level with enough local control with LAWA. And I mean, Grand Forks is going to have to question our participation if we can't find some path to go forward that has enough control with the users. I guess that's what I'm here to speak for. I'm here to speak for the people that are going to use this in Grand Forks and other users. And that's clearly been identified that the local control there's not enough there. And that scares me, and that would definitely put us in a situation to ponder.
Jay, you'd be willing for the 2 teams to work together a little bit here and try to work on some things, maybe bring this back at the next meeting and we can have a discussion about it to both understand clearly. I think what Mayor Brzezinski wants is just an operations before somebody signs a PPA. They're probably going to want to see how operations work, and LAWA wants to have a bigger role in that since we're fronting 25% of the project and our money is going in on that. We'd like to know, you know, how the water is going to be managed once it gets to that point. I think, Jay, and you, I understand that, you know, Garrison is committed to getting us the water.
Yep.
Is working on that. And Tammy, I can understand some of the objections you had. So it should be a discussion with the teams, both teams involved with that.
And that's my request, is that we've got to have the right people in the room making the decisions. I mean, we can't sit back and, you know, exclude people or have personality issues. I said, you know, right away that we've got to be a team going forward. With that in mind, I mean, I've tried my best, you know, to put that best foot forward and to include everything. And I know I hear that, you know, that it's your statement, I think, was it fell on deaf ears. Well, it never fell on deaf ears, okay? And with that, you know, if we're going to make this thing successful, which we can, and we can go forward together as a group, and if LAWA wants to take a larger role in it, we have welcomed that from day one. And I think, in short, yeah, okay, LAWA, it's time to step up to the plate. Let's do that then.
So I think what I'd entertain is a motion to table till our next meeting, if we'd like, if that'd be easier for our members to understand that. So is there a move to table?
Oh,
Is that a yes? Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Discussion? I mean, good points made on both sides. I just think we need to continue to work. We want to get this thing going forward, and thanks for the consultant showing the complexity of how this is all going to work. It is very, very complex. Katie, any comment? Would that be fine if we tabled for a month?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. Any other discussion or questions?
Well, I can appreciate the expertise of what we just heard from those two individuals with their background in dealing with water and contracts, and that can, help us with our project or even the agreement that we have to build onto that rather than rewrite it. So I greatly appreciate the information that we received today about, all the pitfalls that you can run into when you get into a water project and what things you should be looking forward to. And now I believe those individuals could integrate that with what's already put in place, and we can come together with a good agreement.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
I think Mayor Mahoney wanted to say something.
I'm sorry, Bernie? It's to table that motion. Right? Don't know. Katie, you right?
Mayor Bochinsky can rescind his motion and table this item till the next agenda.
Second to agree to it and there, or you.
Well, you guys put me in a
You
tough
have
spot
to
here.
vote it through and it has to fail.
I disagree. If you table a motion because you don't want to take a vote on the motion, it's tabled till the next meeting.
Well, we have a motion though on the floor, but I'm willing to rescind the motion to not put Ann in a tough spot to have to decide whether to support me or not. But I don't think the conversation's done. Again, I don't see this as a grab. I see this as LAWA stepping up as a bigger partner. And again, I think this just proves my point that, LAWA needs to be pushed down and not have a role. We've talked so much about collaboration, and I see this as a further collaboration, not the opposite. But again, there's more discussion to be had, but I will rescind, sensing the room.
Do I need to also rescind?
Yes.
So done.
So we have no motion to act on that. I don't have to table anything. Correct?
You've got it right now.
Okay. What do you want to do in motion number 2?
I'm not going to read it because it doesn't really matter right now.
Okay. Al, are you ready to start speaking? Al Grasser, Tech Report.
Sure. Don't know if I can follow that very well, but Chairman Mahoney, members of the authority, the Technical Advisory Committee met on April 16th, and I'll just go through some of the items we talked about on the agenda and some of the motions that we forwarded for board consideration at that meeting. We did get received a report from the the operations subcommittee, and it's apparent that they're doing really good work, I think, in cooperating with the engineers are providing insight on the plant itself as to arrangement of equipment and, how to, position things for maintenance. It's a perspective that really only operators can have. I mean, you have to be there and operate some of these things. And so I think we're pleased that they're able to provide that value added and discussion. We did talk about trying to make sure that committee really focused on operations side, maybe try to get some more operators in there. Again, it's been very valuable. Fargo's got some systems that are very similar to what the biota treatment plant is going to look like. And so anyway, they're continuing that work at this point, and we expect them to continue in the future and have further reports.
Thank you.
I'm not done yet. So, with all due respect. So we did also have a recap of the operational cost scenarios, and so we've talked about operations here a little bit on the board. Just to give kind of an order of magnitude type thing, you know, from based on some of the past information that's developed, just the basic operation of the biota treatment plant is probably going to be in that $3 million plus. I'm going to say $3 to $4 million a year operating, and obviously that goes up considerably if you start cranking up operations. So it is a big issue, you know, relative to who's going to pay for it, how do you operate it, those kinds of things. So we did get some background on that. I'm going to jump into, from there, probably a couple of the items that are on your agenda today. We did talk about some change orders, and that is on your board agenda 8C, item 1A and B. And the first one is change order number 6. That is with Garney Construction. The amount is $918,029. It's addressing stockpile, restoration, dewatering, road maintenance, some things like that. Those are some of the, this is one of the early projects, if not the first one. And so some of those things I'm happy to say as we've moved on with contracts, the engineers have modified the contract agreements and the plans to address those. So we will have fewer of those types of things going forward. But we did make a recommendation to approve that change order. It's called change order number 6. The other one in that same group is change order number 1. That's with Oscar Renda. That is a zero cost change order because they have dollars within the actual contract. They're just shifting dollars from where they have some leftover or haven't spent the money on some foundation work, big rock that you put under the pipe. They haven't had to use that. And they're shifting $440,000 into, again, the road maintenance item. Finding that's an expensive item just to keep up. You're using a lot of heavy equipment running them around these, you know, minimum maintenance roads and things like that. And so the committee also recommended approval of that change order. The next group of items that we have is in your board packet, agenda E. I think items 1 and 2, which is the contract 6B and C and contract 7A and B. The discussion at the committee was that these are some of the westerly segments of pipe associated with NDOS, and the idea was to try to get these things out to bid ASAP. And there was some discussion, it was related to us that there's been some discussion at the legislative session about putting in an emergency clause so the dollars that are developed at the legislature can be released early enough so that they can get these things. We're talking about advertising for bids here in May. That was the discussion. The technical item, though, also really was approving plans and specifications. So what the committee did with this is we did move to approve the plans and specifications and forward that to the board. However, the discussion about bidding really has to be done at the board level because we were hoping at that time that the dollar amounts and the legislative intent would be clearer at this point in time. Maybe isn't crystal clear yet. So the technical advisory committee is not making a recommendation relative to necessarily the final decision to bid, if that makes sense. The technical pieces shouldn't change whether we're doing, you know, the work, you know, in 1 month or 6 months or a year. That this is about 90% plans and specs level, if I remember right. So we were comfortable moving ahead with the plans and specs, but the board may have to address the allowance, and that's on your agenda. Yep. So I won't get into that anymore. I'm just kind of trying to lay that groundwork. I guess that you'll have to talk about that. The next item on the board agenda is item under agenda F, and it's 1 through 6. These are items I think primarily associated with, again, McCluskey Canal. These are either studies or work that needs to be done with the water treatment plant, the biota treatment plant, that to move things forward. The first one was task order 2150, McCluskey Canal Hydraulic and Water Quality Analysis. That's $443,000. Again, that water quality is going to roll back into developing operating costs, operating procedures, operating costs, so that's a necessary activity. The other one was task order 2350 is the McCluskey Canal Intake and Pumping Station. Again, they're looking at getting that final design so they can get that bid out. The dollar amount for that task order is $877,000. Then we have task order 3150 is the NDOS, the actual water treatment plant pilot testing. Again, this all rolls back into operating costs at some point. That'll do, again, the water treatment feasibility testing. That the dollar amount for that task order is $872,000. Then we have task order 3220, the NDOS facility supplemental geotechnical. Again, that's doing your subsoil investigations, those kinds of things in order to site your and structurally design your biota treatment plant, pumping stations, things like that. That dollar amount there is $886,000. And then we come to the final one. Task order 5315, 5325. These are for the partial design services for the pipelines. The NDOS sections 1 and 2. Again, these are the 90% design. That's maybe why I had the 90 in my head. 90% design to put those contracts together so that they're basically prepared to move to bid whenever, all the financing and everything comes together. Task order 5315 is for $1,950,000, and the 5325 is $1,780,000. I think the total amount of all those is, I'm going to call it $6.8 million. The committee did recommend approval of all of those items. The last thing, and I will be quiet, is we did have a brief introduction on the electrical components of the biota plant. This is going to be a really big deal. It's a big part of the operation costs. We just had a flavor of it, and so we're going to delve deeper into that in the next TAC committee, that and the operations side. These things are, it kind of blew my mind a little bit, but you're talking about, 1 to 2 megawatts of power and it's just operating at the base condition. So we're talking big stuff here. High dollar amount, long delivery lead times. So we need to delve into that. And again, that'll be part of our upcoming work activities. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions of Al? A lot of information there, Al. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brent Bogart, legislative update?
Yeah, just a couple of legislative updates. In your board packet is House Bill 1162. That was the bill that would add another city of population over 40,000 to the Lowell board, which basically means West Fargo. And that bill has been passed by both the House and the Senate and was messaged to the governor yesterday. With his schedule, it may take a few days for him to get it signed, but it will be signed. And that will go in effect August 1st. So after August, Bernie will no longer
do
be
members
a
need to
associate
send
member.
a lot of emails or texts so they can get the support for Bernie, or are we okay?
I think we're okay. The other, obviously, the major legislative update is regarding where we're at with funding. The Senate did pass 1020 yesterday or 2 days ago. It's all becoming a blur when you're up there. So it's headed to conference committee between the House and Senate for Red River. The House had 260 million in the bill. The Senate changed that to 150. So a pretty significant difference. We went into the session following the legislative intent plan. That was a $221 million request. So the House had upped that. Senate is obviously way less than that even. So there will be a lot of discussions here starting next week with the House and Senate to figure out where those numbers are at. But Representative Swantek and Senator Sorvag will be leading that conference committee that is, they're both obviously here from Fargo, big supporters of the project. A lot of the discussion is related to the carryover dollars that the Department of Water Resources has and how they use those dollars. And then also with the change in the revenue forecast, they saw about a $100 million reduction in oil tax revenues to the Resources Trust Fund for funding water projects in this next biennium. And there are some issues, I guess you could say, or concerns in regards to if that's going to continue to decline, because it's more of our, it's called the stripper well exemption on extraction tax. So more wells are not paying extraction tax. So it's a bigger issue than just price and production. It's also certain wells do not pay on extraction tax. And right now that's about 15% of the state's production. So that will be something that will have to be watched. And that's kind of where the Senate was made aware of that issue after the revenue forecast. So those details weren't known when the House passed their budget. So all of this is going to play into the conference committee in the next week.
Do you sense it'll go any higher than 150?
I do think that we'll see higher than 150. I don't know if we'll get to the 221, but I do feel like there'll be opportunity for some increase there. We continue to work with the Department of Water Resources, the Bank of North Dakota, and the legislators regarding the cash management, because one of those, as we talk about carryover, we bid projects, as was discussed. A lot of our projects are bigger projects. They're more than they're really 3+ year construction, and really only one construction season in the biennium. And so we always have carryover. We award a project, we're going to spend maybe 50% of that project in the biennium, the rest of it's that next summer. And so there's always this continuous carryover on these big projects. And so we're talking about how can we better manage that cash with DWR and get more projects in the ground by their cash management. Maybe we actually can bid more and manage how we spend that money. So those are some of the conversations we're continuing to have.
Dwayne or Mary, do you have anything to add to that on the legislative front? No? Okay. Dwayne DeCray, federal funding update.
Unfortunately, we're basically in a holding pattern on the federal funding. Congress is trying to get a budget passed right now, and then once they get that done, then they've got to go to budget reconciliation. And so when we talk on our phone calls with the national lobbyists, they keep telling us it'll be months. So hopefully it's still in the hopper, and we just haven't heard anything yet.
Okay, thank you. Kip Kovar, construction review, and then we're going to go into change orders. I think so.
How about now? Yep. Thanks, Mr. Chairman and Lawa. Mr. Grasser did most of my heavy lifting, so he did such a good job.
I was going to vote on it, but I'll let you start.
Yeah, he did such a good job. But just kick you off here, we're going to just recap a couple things about 2024. Here's a map showing your active, all of your contracts. We have 2 contracts over in the Missouri River that are done. Active contracts, 5D. 5A is complete. The new one that you just approved here not too long ago, 6A, that we haven't even begun construction on that. 5B is rounding up this summer, and then contract 5C is ongoing. This gives you a perspective of what's in the ground. So on contract 5D, they have 4.3 miles. On 5B, they have all the pipe in the ground, but they have to come back and do some of the manholes and the plumbing around some of the manholes, some more restoration. Contract 5C, Oscar Renda, they have 3.7 miles in the ground. And then 6A is the one we just talked about. The text I got this morning, as far as this year goes, so the earliest we've put pipe in the ground is, I think we've put maybe a pipe or 2 in the ground in May, end of May. Well, I was notified this morning we already have 560 some feet of pipe in the ground and it's April. So hopefully hopefully we can keep that up. 2024 up here, we did a great job in 2024, 11.4 miles, even with 30 inches of rain. So that was really good considering that rain. And then just, you can see the trend there. Previous in 2021, that contract was only at 1.1 miles, and we're heading in the right direction. So to date, all of your contracts that you've approved are $270,600,291.88. All of the change orders that you've approved to date are a minus $332,709.58. So your revised contract price is $270,267,582.30. So a percent of change order is a minus 0.1%. So that's really good. Good metric. Any questions with 2024 recap, what you have under contract to date? Your next topic would be just those change orders that came out of last year.
We'll do an action item, contract 5B, 5C, the task order change orders. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Is there a second? Dave?
You can give Dave the first. That's okay.
No, go ahead, take it, Brandon.
Any discussion? It's unusual for a budget to be under budget. That's wonderful. Roll call vote, please.
Okay, start with Tom Erdman,
Yes.
Idzo,
Yes.
Mahoney,
Yes.
Riley,
Yes.
thank you, Schmaltz,
Yes.
Schmidt,
Yes.
Eltoff, Bigwood,
Yes.
Wojcinski,
Yes.
Bonsack,
Yes.
Broussard,
Yes.
and Karlsruhe.
Yep.
Motion's carried.
Work plan update.
So, did you pass both change orders? Thank you. I missed that. I
We're
thought
trying to move along.
You are moving. Okay, I get the hint. Work plan update. So in your board books is your report as far as the outlook goes for 2025. Have a map up here for you. So contract 5D, A, B, C, and 6A are all under contract. You heard the bidding strategy with the legislature, depending on how much money you get. 6B, C, and 7A and B are shovel ready. So we'd anticipate going out for bids in May on those, as long as Lake Agassiz and Garrison Diversion agree. If anybody asked, we are ready with 4C also. Just want to let you know. Moving forward, we're hoping for 2025, our goal is going to be 13.5 miles in the ground. And then if we want to stay on track, we're going to need to ramp up to about 15 miles in the ground to finish by 2032. We did talk quickly a little bit, and I'll just go over this really quick. We did talk about a bidding strategy about bundling. There might be an advantage if you bundle 6B and C together, and there might be an advantage bundling 7A and B together. We'll see. We had Vogel look at it. It's legal to do, so we'll test that out to see if there's an advantage of bundling a larger project together. That's just for your information. Did you want me to move on to the contract 6B, C, 7A, and B? Chairman, or your TAC chairman did such a good job. These were the plans and specifications. The TAC approved them to move on to the Lake Agassiz Board for approval. Take any questions. If not, we'd like a motion to approve those.
I think Al did a great job. I think we could just go to the motion to approve these two funds, 1 and 2, both contracts. Do I have a motion? Is there a second? Boy, they're getting hot now, getting quick, aren't we? Any discussion? Roll call vote?
Can I get
Idzo?
clarification? This is
Sorry.
a motion to approve for bid, correct?
Approve both the pipeline 6B, 6C,
where?
7A, 7B.
So this would be approving the plans and specifications. We're going to work with Lake Agassiz and Garrison Diversion and understand what the legislature is going to give us, and then we can bid appropriately.
Okay. So there's not, this is not for a specific bidding.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Good, sorry. Now we'll do roll call.
Okay. Itzo,
Yes.
Mahoney,
Aye.
Riley,
Yes.
Schmaltz,
Yes.
Schmidt. Eltoff. Bigwood,
Yes.
Wachensky,
Yes.
Bonzak,
Yes.
Broussard,
Yes.
Karlsruhe,
Yes.
and Erdman.
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Now, Brent, you tell me there's a resolution that we have to put in here as well for this?
Well, I'm gonna actually ask Lisa a question. Because we have to include minutes, part of the State Water Commission's application process has to have minutes and I talked to the Water Commission. I didn't know if we'll have draft minutes in time because the date of application is that we want to submit the application is what? April 28th is the end, but I think, Mary, we wanted to try to get in by the 25th. So I don't know if you'll have draft minutes done by then or not, because we can include draft minutes. So I had drafted a resolution that the Water Commission's staff said, if we have the resolution, that would work instead of draft minutes, so that we approved it, because otherwise they will not accept that application without the approval of both Garrison and Lawa. That's their new part of their cost share policy now.
Okay, I can get the draft done
Okay.
by the 25th.
Okay, because you'll have to do both Garrison and Lawa minutes then.
Yeah, you know, you said Garrison.
Okay.
All right.
If we think we can get it, then we don't need the resolution. If we can have the draft minutes, that's good enough.
Lisa, you're okay with that? You'll have the minutes by then?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Otherwise, that's what the resolution was. The Water Commission now has that you have to have it in the minutes or a resolution. Okay? I go back to you, Kip, then, I think.
Yeah, the next
Task
item.
orders, as explained by Al.
Yep, Al explained these task orders. Remind you, this is from the federal mRNI money. When you add the federal mRNI money and the local cost share, it comes up to $6 million. If there's any specific questions, Paul or I can answer them. Most of them are focused on the NDOS portion, so the federal portion of the project. And, we do have a breakout on the screen for you of each of those task orders. Any questions for Paul or I?
Mr. Chair, I'll move approval on F1 through F6.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions? Roll call vote, please.
Okay, I left off with, okay. Start with Mahoney,
Aye.
Riley,
Yes.
Schmaltz,
Yes.
Schmidt. Yes. Eltoff. Bigwood,
Yes.
Wachensky,
Yes.
Bonzak,
Yes.
Broussard,
Yes.
Karlsruhe,
Yes.
Erdman,
Yes.
Itzo.
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Kip, you're on again.
Okay, so to do these, we had to make revisions to your 23-25 biennium work plan. So your biennium work plan, the last one you saw was November 14th. That biennium work plan had a total of $246 million in it. So we already knew the NDOS funding was coming, so that's in there. But what we did to make the task orders work is if you look on the right-hand column, that's what we had in your November 14th version. In your task order proposed funding update or funding, that column, that's what we're moving the task orders to. So these are revisions to your binding work plan to make the NDOS task orders that you just approved work out. I can go through these in detail if you want me to. I'll leave it up to you guys.
So is this, you need a motion to approve this change, is that correct?
We feel like if there's any revisions to your binding work plan budget, there should be probably board approval of that.
So I'll do it this way. Does anybody have any questions of Kip about what he's put forth to us? And if we're okay with that, then I'd entertain a motion.
That was Mahoney or?
So the bottom line never changed, we just moved money within.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. Is there a second? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mahoney,
Aye.
Riley,
Yes.
Schmaltz,
Yes.
Schmidt. Eltoff. Bigwood.
Yes.
Latinsky.
Yes.
Bonsack.
Yes.
Broussard.
Yes.
Carlsrud.
Yes.
Erdman.
Yes.
And Edzo.
Yes.
We have, motion is carried.
I don't think I can get rid of you, Kip. You're up again.
Okay, the team put together a draft 2025, 2027 draft biennium work plan. Because we've heard so many different levels of funding, we tried to coordinate this draft work plan with colors. So I won't go through the detail, but I can tell you that unless you want me to. If you look at the green, we call that the base option. If you add up all the green items, that'll get you very close to a $200 million budget. So in our minds, that's the state and local share. If you add the green and the blue, that gets you to a $266 million budget. That would be adding another pipeline contract. If you add the orange, green, and blue, that gets you close to a $300 million budget. That's really close to the legislative intent. And if you want to go all in, because we did hear at one point, maybe there would be extra money. So that budget is $346 million. That you'd have to add up all the colors. The last one was roughly $340 million. And so depending on where you guys come in at the legislature, we can adjust this. If there's things on here you guys don't like, and you don't feel like there is high priority for you guys, let's talk about them at the next meeting.
And I'm understanding that our Washburn project is on the primary budget.
We do have Washburn in here, yes.
And just for the members to know, we lost our federal brick grant for Washburn, but Governor Armstrong is working on having state fund that instead. So Pheasanton and Lincoln and Washburn have projects, I think, Dwayne, worth about 20 million, but they're trying to help, he's trying to find some money to help us out, to help out Washburn do their project, so. So on this work plan, Kip, do we also have to approve?
Nope, that's just a draft
Just
for
a
your
draft
information,
us to
but we
know,
should
and we'd
talk
vote
about
on
it.
after we know the money.
Yep.
Okay. Program schedule?
Program schedule, tab Y is your schedule. I'm not going to go through that. We've laid out all the various pipe contracts in there when we think they would come on board, kind of with the legislative intent schedule, the 10-year build. You can see when we think we're going to work on facilities, all those types of things. And so it's there for your information. Thank you.
Steve Burring, are you ready? Do you know how to talk fast?
Sure.
You're on.
Chairman Mahoney, I was asked to provide an update on two things, user engagement and then a little bit of routing. From a user engagement standpoint, as we worked through the memorandum of commitment process, we realized that we were getting to the point of winding down. We were asked to consider three different approaches. One was just to do an abrupt stop. One was to try to turn over every rock of all the various people that we could contact. And a kind of Goldilocks one in between was to just make sure that we kept in contact with everybody that we'd already reached out to. And I think it was a consensus that the Goldilocks approach would be the best one. And so the map here is indicative of all the systems that we've reached out to so far. Everybody that you see in green, whether it's a shaded county or whether it's a specific city or specific rural water district, has signed the memorandum of commitment, either pre-Series D2 or post-Series D2. Everybody in red are the systems that have declined, and then everybody that's in blue is still in play. It might look like quite a few dots, but Dakota Rural Water District actually has 2 dots, and they now serve Hannaford in the middle of the state there, so that's just one user, and we did meet with them recently and anticipate that they'll be getting back to us. We had a recent meeting in Grafton with Agassiz, Walsh, and Northeast, and then so we anticipate they will all come together at some point. We also had a recent meeting with Devil's Lake, who serves Northeast, who serves Langdon, so that'll cover that particular dot, and I think Lakota will likely go as Devil's Lake goes, leaving the only dot left on there is Ellendale, way down in the south central part of the state, and that's where that large data center is being built, and they're still considering their possible participation. The last time we talked to you, we had anticipated that we could get up to about 168 CFS, At this point, our current projection would be 165.14 cubic feet per second with all of the greens and blues coming to the table. The only wild card would be Devil's Lake. We're not sure which way they're going to go.
Very good.
In terms of looking at that, maybe more from an accounting perspective, you can see that we had 115.5 CFS signed up through the Series D2 prior to our October 25th of 2024. We grabbed another 37.27 that have approved and submitted their MOC. Prior to this afternoon, Richland County had not submitted their MOC, but they have as of this afternoon. So we have that memorandum of commitment for 4 CFS. And then you can see who we anticipate potentially coming in, Northeast in some capacity, Walsh in some capacity, Agassiz, Dakota, potentially Lakota, and then we still have Ransom County and Trail County considering the possibility of joining the project. Are there any questions on users?
Any questions, Steve?
The other aspect is a little bit more nuanced, and I'll try to do this quickly. As an engineer, I suppose I could delve into this in way more detail than needed. When you look at potentially serving the users, we need to understand where that water is going to be taken off. And we have 4 different scenarios here. One is for everybody that's signed and approved the MOC, where we're not using the James River as a conveyance mechanism. So if you get water down south to Jamestown or beyond, we'd have to use a pipeline of some fashion. The second one is those same users with the James River on board. The next one is everybody that we think will sign up without the James River. And the final one is everybody that we think will sign up with the James River. And so quickly, and once you get through one, the rest of them are pretty intuitive. But of the 156.77 CFS that we currently have approved right now, either 0.45 or 0.87 CFS of that will likely be pulled off at Washburn before we even get to the McCluskey Canal. And the sway on that is Ann and McLean Sheridan. If they end up with their usage being right around Washburn, then they would put their 0.42 CFS to work in the Washburn area. If they get more usage in that McCluskey area, we could also take water off the intake at that location. It gets a little more complicated for them because they don't have a Washburn to treat it. So we have to figure out exactly what to do with that. But if an industry developed in that area, they could certainly grab their water there. After that, then we'd push 155.9 CFS down the pipe, drop 0.5 CFS off at Carrington based on their MOC. We drop 11 CFS off for Jamestown, anticipating that we'd build a pipeline down to their location. And then we'd have 144.4 CFS that would continue to the end of the pipe. Right now, we anticipate 5.6 of that would be through direct pipeline service, and we anticipate the other 139 CFS roughly would be dropped into Cheyenne River and then continue into Lake Ashtabula. If we switch the scenario over where we can now use the James River as conveyance mechanism, you can see that everything is the same up into the point where we hit the James River. And now instead of dropping 11 CFS, we drop anywhere between 18 and 22 CFS. The reason for the big range is that 18 would be Jamestown, Dickey County, and Lemoore County. And then we have the flexibility of Southeast water users not knowing whether they'd use it on their western system, their central system, or their eastern system. And so if you put all 4 on the western system, that would be where the origin of the 22. We then carry a range to the end of the pipe where some of that goes as direct pipeline service, 5.6 CFS, and the rest goes into Lake Cheyenne River and Lake Ashtabula. If we go to more of the upper end where we get everybody engaged, and this is like kind of the nirvana of things where we would get everybody, so it's a bit more than that 165 I showed you earlier. The front 2 connections don't continue. You can see we push a pretty significant amount down the pipe, and then we would get to the point where we'd have 11 CFS drop again at Jamestown, push 157.6 CFS to the end of the pipe, and then have some go north to a continuous pipeline branch, and the rest go into Lake Ashtabula. I don't think we'll get to this 169, as I indicated earlier. I think we'll be closer to that 165. That puts us in line with the NDOT's limit of 165 CFS that they had through the EIS process. You'll note, though, however, that if we don't use the James River, we do push a pretty high percentage all the way to the end of the pipe, and so that might require some engineering considerations on how to make that happen in the best way, and that's why we went through this exercise. If we go to the scenario where we would now use the James River, everything on the front end stays the same as the last scenario. Now we drop between 19 and 23 CFS off at that branch at Jamestown, and then carry somewhere between 145 and 150 to the lake. And so this may seem like a lot of engineering information, but it's really important both from a cost modeling standpoint as well as a technical standpoint, and it will likely determine whether some of the people continue in the project, because the James River service scenario appears like it will be less expensive than a direct pipeline. Any questions on all of that?
A lot of good engineering, thank you.
Yep. That ends my presentation. Thank you.
Mary Meridian, Interim Finance Agreement, Series E.
I think, Mr. Chairman, that we need to back up to the memorandum of commitment approvals.
Oh, I'm sorry. Approval? Memorandum of Commitment Capacity Maps or approval is what you're talking about?
Yeah, it's the MOC approvals that you have, A through H, Grafton, Jamestown,
okay.
Lisbon.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's a good idea. Discussion? Let's roll call vote.
Schmaltz? Yes. Schmidt?
Yes.
Eltoff? Yes. Bigwood?
Yes.
Wachensky?
Yes.
Bonsack?
Yes.
Broussard?
Yes.
Carlsrud?
Yes.
Erdman?
Yes.
Izzo?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Yes.
And Riley.
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Okay, Mary, you're on again anyway.
Okay, yeah. Now would be K, and then it's tab double I. This is the Series E agreement, which Lake Agassiz has already approved moving forward with this, but this is approval of the final Series E agreement. It covers the $6 million that most of the task orders that Kip just talked about. It's $4.5 million of federal MR&I dollars, and then $1.5 million in the Water Infrastructure Revolving Loan Fund. So Fargo and Grand Forks have already approved this, and then Lake Agassiz needs to approve it, and Garrison Diversion. And then once this is approved by both boards, then next week at Garrison Diversion's board meeting, they'll approve the bond resolution for the $1.5 million.
Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second, Schmidt.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Okay, Schmidt?
Yes.
Eltoff? Bigwood?
Yes.
Wachensky?
Yes.
Bonsack?
Yes.
Broussard?
Yes.
Carlsrud?
Yes.
Erdman?
Yes.
Izzo?
Yes.
Mahoney?
Yes.
Riley?
Yes.
And Schmaltz? Motion's carried.
Interim Finance Agreement, Series F.
Yes, so our next interim of finance agreement coming up would be Series F, and that would be for the funding that the Red River Valley Water Supply Project gets for this biennium, the 25-27 biennium. Kip already talked about the work plan and the various colors and how much it could be between the $150 million in state cost share up to the $260 million. And then talked about approving, letting the bids for 6B and C and 7. In order to do all of that, we're just talking about here's if Lake Agassiz and Garrison decide that they want to do this, and we've talked to this about leadership, is if you want to be able to award those contracts, I'm going to drop all the way down to the bottom on August 7th, the notice to proceed, that we need to start now drafting Series F agreement and talking with Garrison and Lake Agassiz leadership. Tammy is already drafting that. We'll be sharing it with the same set of attorneys that she normally, does do that. And then Garrison, or Lake Agassiz Board today is approving to submit to the State Water Commission cost share. Garrison Board will do that next week. And then on April 25th is when we are looking at submitting the request to the State Water Commission for the cost share and the Water Infrastructure Revolving Loan Fund. But just showing all of those dates in there, that if leadership decides that you want to award those contracts this summer, that we can't let any of those dates slide. So just kind of putting it in there.
What is
that
your suggested motion, or is it just information?
It's just for the information of everybody to know that if we let any of those dates slide, it makes everything on the bottom slide. Tammy, I don't know if you have any comments.
Any questions?
Gotten the go ahead to start working on the agreement.
No comments.
Law, bylaws revision. Katie, how can we get through this one? Like, this is something we've been waiting for.
So the first slide that I have just is an overview of the red lines that you see. It talks about the first part is the new sections that we've put into the bylaws. Section 1 is now statutory basis, purpose, authority. Section 2 is a definitional section, and then Section 13 is governing law. In sections that just had minor cleanup items, Section 3, place of business, Section 4, membership, Section 7, officers and staff, Section 9, expenses of directors, Section 10, deposits, funds, fundraising, Section 11, financial records review, and Section 12 are amendments to bylaws. So those are pretty much all the same. We just have some minor cleanup items. The three big ones that we have substantive changes to. The first one we already saw part of today in Section 5, and that's with the addition of that additional city, which will be West Fargo. I also had a conversation with Director Schmidt, and we're going to clean up subsection B4 in there. It talks about Moorhead serving as an associate member starting in 2006. We're kind of outdated at this point. So we will change that section to just talk about how the Minnesota entity for the director position is appointed. So that'll be a cleanup. So that's Section 5. Section 6, that's a big one. That's weighted voting, which we've been talking about for a while. Supermajority items. And then Section 8 is committees. So the first one is weighted voting. The current bylaws have each director has one vote. So far, we've talked about proposed amendments having the weighted cap based on nominations at 48%, so that no one exceeds that, and then having at least 3 directors voting in favor of that. There's been a discussion about entities that are like sub-nominations. So West Fargo, Casserole, part of Fargo, as well as Moorhead. If Moorhead doesn't have a nomination, how do they vote as a director? There are some options that are up there. One option that Fargo threw out, that John Digges threw out, was that a director with no nomination or a sub-nomination gets 1 vote as a weighted vote. Something to think about if we do that, if there is anyone who has a nomination that may be less than 1 vote. Mayor Bachensky and I were talking about this. Let's say percentage-wise, that entity ends up with like a 0.72%. Maybe you round that up to 1 so that no one is less than 1% vote. So that's certainly something that we'll take discussion on today. I don't know if you guys want to discuss that now, or do you want me to move to the next item about supermajorities, or should we pause here and talk about this one first?
Just going back to Section 4, I assume there's more counties than what are listed here in North Dakota, since our county isn't, Foster County is not on there. So, because it says the boundaries of these counties, and now Sheridan, rural water, so Sheridan should be listed. Wells County, wouldn't they be listed? Because the pipe goes through Wells County, but there's probably nobody in Wells County that's nominated for anything, and Foster County is missing on this.
Yeah, these are set statutorily, is where that list of counties is found. So if that would be something that we wanted to change, we would have to do it statutorily.
Right, so I mean, we talking about changes to this, so we're not gonna vote on any of these bylaw changes today, I wouldn't think, because.
Oh, this was to look at it and get any changes you want if we got, obviously, there's enough questions here that we probably would have to wait to vote on a finished product, right?
Yep, this,
But if you want-
the
If you
intent
want to
today
bring
is.
those up, that's fine, Tom.
Yep, the intent today is just discussion. Under the current bylaws, you have to have a first reading and a second reading before you can approve them. So the intent today was just to do some discussion and then bring back hopefully a first reading for your
So Tom, you're
next meeting.
suggesting we may have to change the counties?
Okay, so that's what I mean, there are some changes that I just mentioned, plus some other ones as we go through the section, so I don't know if I need to just sit here and listen for a little bit to see which section we're going to talk about, or do I want to go ahead and talk about the sections that I have some objections in or some additions to?
I think if Tom's got some suggestions, he could tell you, right, Katie?
Yes, please.
You'll find this section.
Yep.
Go ahead.
So I believe the section, be section 5, that's under state legislative process to increase another director from 12 to 13. Isn't that section, I guess they're kind of crossed out here, but section 5, I believe that is.
Yep, A2 will have that additional member.
Yeah, on page 2, correct.
Yep.
Oh, I guess what else do I got a concern with? I guess on page 5, I guess I have a personal opinion that there should not be a weighted average vote. We have a 13-member board and we've been working well together, and I believe anything that comes to this board that we discuss it and we vote on it accordingly, whether we have a large user or a small user, and we have a unanimous, pretty much every item that we've discussed has been a unanimous vote in favor of after we know all the facts. So I personally don't believe there should be a weighted vote by any party. It's kind of like the old co-op, whether I sell 100,000 bushels of grain at the elevator or the guy that just brings in one truckload, it's one vote for one membership. That's my personal opinion.
That's why we have a discussion. Go ahead. Jim? Or
I would agree with Mr. Erdman. Mr. Carlsrud and I also sit on another board for energy supply, and that is a 61-member board, and there's 13 directors. Doesn't matter if you're 200 meters or you're 20,000 meters, you get one vote, and that board works very well. So I would agree with Mr. Erdman.
Dave, you want to say something? I don't know, you're coming to the mic, so I assumed you were going to talk.
Well, I have thoughts, and we'll qualify here by saying that I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, and so all of these, I told Brent earlier, all of these formulas that you kind of sail by me. So I've been exposed to a couple situations where you have large and small, and one of them is in North Dakota basketball, Class A and Class B, or just say Class A and Class B schools. Well, we had 18 big schools and 100 and some B schools, little schools. Didn't work very well because they could gang up on each other. So I take Tom's thought to heart here in that, yeah, we all, we all see where we're going. We're all going to the same, shooting for the same goal. Lots of work is being done. But we have to protect each other as well. And so I can see some sort of weighted vote. Because we'll be a small user, so I'm speaking as a small user, but not for the small users. And we can't have the large users ruling the roost, but we can't have all of us small users be able to gang up on those two either. So we have to figure a way, okay? In this eloquent formula here is well done. Before we added the Moorhead, Fargo, or West Fargo and East Grand Forks, Breckenridge, how are we going to do those? But before that, we just had Fargo and Grand Forks as the large users. And we had 12 of us directors together, I think then. So my thought for a weighted vote might be as simple as 2 plus 3 small users. So if you have something that you feel needs passing, so Tim and Brandon are working at it. If they have a good plan, I would think that at least 3 of us would be willing to support it. So that would be about 30% of us. So the 2 largest and 30%. There's no math in that. It just seemed like it would be something to work. And if you go to a super majority, maybe you just go the 2 and 5. Some number like that, because with what we have, we're going to be rounding up and rounding down and so forth. And so at the risk of oversimplification, maybe that is something that could be considered. And then how then do Moorhead, East Grand Forks, Breckenridge, and West Fargo be represented in that they don't have the nomination weight? I don't have an answer. I just have questions.
Katie, there was some solution to the nomination. There was an opportunity to give them some type of vote without a nomination. What was that?
Yep, you can. It was proposed to give someone who has a sub-nomination or someone who sits on the board but doesn't have a nomination 1 vote.
And that's fine, but then that would change your number somehow in the weighted if you did it, as it indicated before, because then we'd have 3 or 4. So you could have Fargo, Grand Forks, East Grand Forks, West Fargo, and Moorhead voting for the 2 nominations. May work, but it's just something that should be answered at some point.
Perhaps what I do in this interest of time is perhaps you and Tom can work with Katie and try to come up with a couple options for us. Weighted voting versus maybe 3 votes or this or 5 votes or that. To Tom's point, it might be just we vote basically in a sense, but to try to figure out some kind of system that might work better. Don't disagree, Tom. We have a very agreeable board to vote usually unanimously. We sometimes have votes we vote against. But I think it's just when we're all gone, we're all affable, good people. But what might replace us, so if you give us a couple options just so we can think about that the board members could look at, I'd appreciate that.
Well, a couple of years ago, I talked to a guy who was out on a pontoon drinking beer, and he thought it was a heck of an idea.
I can't wait to be the person on the pontoon drinking a beer with you having this discussion.
Katie, do you have anything else go on now?
Not on that one. The next one is supermajority voting, but maybe we discuss that as well when we meet together as a smaller group. The last item that's really outstanding is committee members. Right now, as the bylaws are drafted, they just have an executive committee that consists of the chair, the vice chair, and others as appointed. That's the same in the proposed bylaw change. The proposed bylaws also include a finance committee and a technical committee. On each of those, the current draft has 3 members from a city with population greater than 40,000 east of State Highway 1 and north of State Highway 200, 4 members from a city with a population greater than 40,000 east of State Highway 1 and south of State Highway 200, and then 2 others to be determined.
I think, Washinsky, you had some ideas of how big those committees should be. Are you comfortable with this? This is 7, 9 people?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would like to see the committees to be a little bit smaller and be a little bit more effective there, but have a broad enough, group there. I guess my biggest worry is if Fargo keeps up with the traffic and all the problems, they might be less than 40,000, and then what's going to happen? So.
Yep.
No, I mean, keeping it tight and moving things forward is going to be important. Sometimes the issue we have with the TAC right now is you've got, I think, 60 invites. How many? Can you tell me who the members of the TAC committee are right now? Who are the voting members on the TAC right now?
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. We've talked about that right now it's very open-ended, and I think any kind of process that kind of identifies who the members, I think there's sometimes some confusion on the people that are listening in. It's like, well, am I a member or am I not a member? And we've been trying to just open that invitation up to people, but I think I still get a sense of uncomfortableness from people wondering, can I make a motion? And so I'm not weighing in on the specifics, but I'm saying I think identifying, I think that will empower people to feel maybe more obligated to be part of it, of the committee, and be more active.
Yeah, I guess my only recommendation, maybe you go down to 2 and 3, and 2 to be determined. That would spread it out a little bit. Or on the TBD, maybe we identify some smaller users, I think.
Al, could your group kind of look at it, what you think might be a good functional group that could makes a good idea about how many, because I think I agree with you. Sometimes there's too many on these tax and finance, and can finance committee also make some recommendations? Because sometimes it is difficult when you have too many people, and I mean, what happens if your vote was off or whatever? But could we, Katie, maybe work with both those committees and maybe, I don't know if it's going to be with the city population or whatever, but what would seem reasonable as far as size of committee and who should be on it? And the cities have to commit to it too. I mean, it's time that people take away.
Yes, and I'm also going to suggest, when we first formulated, we were all about plans and specs and things like that. That part of our duties are really starting to wind down. We have a groove, right? And everybody, so I think we need to be thinking, I'm suggesting the board members and everybody, if you're thinking of somebody on that committee, it is going to be a bit of an operation thing, right? It's technical, but it's more operation. So I don't want people to be scared and say, geez, I'm not an engineer, I don't understand all this plan and spec stuff, in that minutia detail. I don't want people to be scared by that, quite frankly. As a chair, I would invite, people that don't necessarily have that level of detail, because we will need that experience as we move forward.
Yeah, I guess I just have one more comment. I just think it's important that these committees, the work that gets done there does get brought to the full board. I don't want some document was shown at the TAC meeting, and then later that's used to set policy when it hasn't come in front of the board. So I think no matter how it ends up, I really hope that it's utilized to bring things to the board with some more data and relevant facts, and not just, policy made there and not coming here. So I think that's equally as important as the makeup.
So perhaps we could do, if board members have ideas of what they think the finance and TAC committee should be, please tell Al, or who's in charge of the finance committee? Maureen? Yeah, or tell Maureen, and I think you guys should weigh in and kind of figure that out. Katie, anything else you wanted to discuss?
No, I just had the process. So hopefully by the next meeting, we'll, assemble all of the comments, and then maybe we'll have another discussion at the next meeting, and then first reading after that. So just so you guys know the process.
Dave, you'll work on some stuff for us with Tom?
Tom and Katie and me?
Yep.
Yes, I would.
Anyone that has some suggestion or review some changes, they should email us in to Katie, or to who we send it to.
Well, let's send it to Katie so she can digest it, but we might have two alternatives. We might have weighted voting versus voting with certain amounts of majority members, just like you thought about it. I mean, your B school, A school is a good example of what you had too many of, but I don't think the board wants to have 3 members just run this, do what they want. We'd like to have input from our board members, so.
Right, so I mean, yeah, it's all going to be up for discussion after we submit this, and whether it's a workable deal, or, I mean, at the end of the day, the bylaws will be approved by this total board.
Absolutely.
So understand that.
Here's what I'll give you the challenge, Tom, is find something that the 13 will vote for, or 14, because Bernie's on now, so.
Okay.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, just one more thought about weighted votes. Another example of why a weighted vote might be critical is Sioux Falls area has a similar situation to what we're doing, and that's turned into quite a kerfuffle, and be a good thing to research for your own information.
very good. Now we have new business. This one's an easy one. I think we'll get a unanimous one on this one. We're going to do resolution, whereas Mark Johnson served as distinction representing Cass Rural Water Users District since 1995 and a member of Lake Agassiz Water Authority from 2015 to 2025. And whereas Mark Johnson recognized the need for Red River Valley Water Supply Project and its importance to the state of North Dakota, and whereas Mark Johnson has served to support the development of rural water, and now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Directors of Lake Agassiz Water Authority duly assembled in Fargo in the state of North Dakota on April 16, 2025, do we hereby express our sincere appreciation for the dedication demonstrated by Mark Johnson throughout his career. Can I have a motion? So moved. Is there a second? Moved and seconded. Where is he?
Mark is sitting back there.
Mark, would you stand up, please? I really appreciate that dedication, Mark, that you'd come to the meeting that you don't even have to be at, so we very much appreciate that. If it was Bernie, he'd be out fishing on his boat right now. I think I asked for a motion in a second, right? I got it? Go ahead, roll call. I'll do it this way. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. And we already met Al, and to welcome aboard. Our board meetings don't usually go this long, so I just want to award you on that. Anything else, Mary, that we got to do? Any action items? Dwayne, are you okay? I'm good. Okay.
One question. I would very much like to request that our attorney and Lawa's attorney start working immediately on the PPA and agreement and with your consultants and get the ball moving. Let's
Very good.
not be stalled out. Let's get this thing moving.
Work together.
Work together.
Okay. No other business, then we'd stand adjourned. Pretty